A new way to play Batman Arkham City was recently discovered that combines the best parts of the PC port and also the Return to Arkham City remasters on current next-gen hardware. Now, there are a lot of different versions of Batman Arkham City. Some of them we will talk about today, some of them we won't, but I did want to talk about this new way to play Arkham City the best way you possibly can, and if it actually really is the godsend version of Arkham that people are saying that it is. Now, before we get into that, I think it's worth tackling the history of this game in terms of its versions between Return to Arkham and Arkham City on PC, and sort of breaking down the differences between them, I guess, so that we can really appreciate what this new version is. So we're going to run through all of this and talk about this new fantastic way to play and experience the game. There is a lot of misinformation and technical jargon around the releases of Batman Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, the first two games in the Arkham franchise, which is absolutely renowned, especially on this channel. It's one of the ways that this channel got its big start, was YouTube randomly recommending an Arkham video I made. And, you know, it's something that has been coming back and forth on the channel since then. It will always be a part of it because I love these games. But when it comes down to Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, a question I often see is, where is the best place to play these games? Now, people are usually not referring to the original base infrastructure that they came out on in terms of Xbox 360 and PS3. Not at all because they're bad systems, but because they are limited by the technological capabilities of their time. When people ask this question, they're usually referring to the more common remaster of Batman Return to Arkham, or the PC version. So I kind of wanted to break down some of the differences between the two today. There's technically three, but we are essentially going to treat it like two. The Return to Arkham remasters, and then the actual PC version. And it's worth saying that when this game was remastered, it was met with some controversy. There was a lot of people who loved the new graphical style and the new enhancements, I suppose, in the graphics in terms of shadows, lighting systems, I guess, configuration, things like that. But there were also a lot of people who believed that the original looked better in terms of its base graphics, and not in terms of its resolution on Xbox 360 and PS3, but character design, how the characters actually looked compared to how they looked in the remaster. When we're looking at the remaster, it's worth mentioning that this was something that did not actually meet some people's expectations on PS4 and Xbox One in terms of performance. A lot of people expected it to eventually be boosted to 4K on Xbox One X or PS4 Pro, when those were sort of the standard for enhanced consoles. And that never actually happened. Now hold on before you furiously type. I know that there are a ton of videos out there that say, hey, this is in 4K 60 FPS on PS4 Pro or Xbox One X. Honestly, a lot of that is misinformation and not intentional. A lot of people believed that it did run there, and some of the reason for that was because of different frame rate targets targeted by different versions of this game. For example, on the One X, it actually was not hitting 4K. It was targeting 1080p, and Eurogamer, along with some other outlets like Digital Foundry, actually have really good breakdowns of what's going on with this. But the scaling is very, very odd. The pixel count and scaling is where it's also very interesting between different versions of these games. Now, Asylum has its own issues with this, which I'm not really going to talk about here because it just adds more numbers and makes it confusing. But with Arkham City, for Return to Arkham City, on the Xbox One X, it was usually not hitting 1920 by 1080p, which is obviously 1080p, just standard HD. What it was usually hitting was somewhere actually around 1408 by 1080p, which is interesting. However, it would get up to 1920 by 1080p. But the PS4 Pro would sometimes hit things like 1536 by 1080p. But again, those were so close to the same, and there were different technical aspects that were slightly off, that they would usually look almost exactly the same on the, I guess, last gen of consoles with the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. So essentially both of those versions, they look pretty dang similar if you're on the One X or the PS4 Pro. You're not gonna really notice that unless you have a pixel counter or a frame rate counter, which even I don't have for this video. Not that they're hard to get, but unless you're running your own analysis, you're not going to see a huge difference unless you're very, very versed in the technical jargon of gaming. It's worth mentioning that the Xbox One X targeted 45 FPS for the Arkham Asylum remaster, Return to Arkham Asylum. However, for Return to Arkham City, it was targeting 30 FPS. So again, this is one of those things where it's a little different between the two, but Arkham City was way bigger. You know, it was a much bigger game, open world within the confines of Arkham City, of course, and it had to sort of cap that off. On the PS4 Pro, it was actually unlocked originally, that frame rate, and I believe that it was as well on the Xbox One. Please, I am capable of mistakes here. There's so many versions on here, so you should also check into some of this for yourself, again, like I said, with Digital Foundry and some of these other outlets. But essentially what this caused was that you could sort of be playing the game and you'd see a lot of jittering, especially when you're flying around, because of this unlocked frame rate that was targeting a specific middle ground. Recently, however, I found out that there actually is a bit of a next-gen upgrade for Batman Return to Arkham City specifically. And I think that it's very interesting to break down because this is a game that people have been waiting for some sort of enhancement forever. The remaster was sort of a big shoes to fill type situation. And I think a lot of people ended up a little let down by what actually came out in Return to Arkham. Not that it's bad, but they were expecting 60 FPS or 4K, and they didn't really get what they thought they were going to. The PlayStation 5, if you put in the disc version of Batman Return to Arkham, either Arkham City or Arkham Asylum, it's going to be a little different. Now, mainly we're focusing on Arkham City because that's the one that I think really saw the improvements here. But with Return to Arkham City, putting in the disc and not connecting to the internet, not updating the game, you are playing build 1.00 off of the disc. It allows you to play the game in 60 FPS. Now, what's interesting about this is that a lot of people are going to say, well, that's it, we're here, 4K, 60 FPS. Not quite. It looks like it's in 4K because of what it's running on. It's one of those things, again, where the remaster was designed very clearly, but there has been no official patch to boost this thing to 4K on consoles. There just hasn't been. So because of that, when we look at the PC version of the game, it is still running in a much higher resolution, but with different graphics. And what I mean by that is that you can run the PC version of this game in whatever resolution you want. That's one of those things with PC gaming where you have the control over what you want to do. Do you want to prioritize frame rate? Do you want to prioritize performance? Or at this point where the game is really old, comparatively to other things coming out on the market, both. So with the PC version of this game, I can be playing it, generally I stick to 60 FPS because I'm an old man and that's just kind of what I'm comfortable with, but you can be playing this well above 60 FPS on PC with the original graphics. On PS5, playing it with backwards compatibility, so it is the PS4 version on the PlayStation 5 console, build 1.0, it will hit 60 FPS. However, the caveat is that there are some dips. Particularly when you're out in Arkham City flying around, you will occasionally notice frame rate dips when you're turning, or perhaps changing the camera angle while flying. I didn't notice them enough to be any sort of problem, and in fact, when I played Return to Arkham City on the base PS4, not Pro, just the base PS4, I noticed a lot more frame rate drops than I notice now. And that is on a patched version of it on the PS4 original base console. But worth noting, you will see those frame rate drops that you don't see as many of in the PC version. One reason for that is PCs have come a long, long way in the last decade, and they essentially brute force their way past the system requirements because they are so far above and beyond what was required to play this game originally that it is sort of a walk in the park for PCs nowadays. With that though, it's worth mentioning that these two versions, Return to Arkham City on the PS5 and Arkham City on the PC, then have a few differences between them, mainly being though the graphical style. Yes, you can play in a higher frame rate on PC. You can. And yes, you can play in a higher resolution on PC. However, the PC version was never remastered, meaning that some of those textures might look better or worse than they did on the Return to Arkham disc, or release in general. I mean, in fact, when I look at this game, and a lot of this part is going to be subjective, some of the character designs I truly do think look better in the original. I really do think that Catwoman, for example, her facial shape, the way her face looks, it looks more beautiful, more pretty, more human, and more feminine on the original version of the game, whereas in the Return to Arkham City version of the game on really anything, it certainly doesn't look bad, but it does look different. Batman is one of the few things that going back and forth between the games, I don't think there's a lot of difference to. If anything, he might look a little bit better on the Return to Arkham version for me, and same with some of the coloring in the game. I think that the colors, for example, on Tim Drake might look a little better on Return to Arkham than they do on the original release. However, the original release is more true to the rock-steady vision of the game. It was the original release. So what it comes down to at the end of the day for me, when making this comparison of where is the best place to play Batman Arkham City, it comes down to not only what you have access to. I'm assuming you have access to everything just for the sake of the video to compare them. I know most people don't, but it sort of comes down to your preferred graphical style. I have not noticed any sort of crashing on the PS5 version. I have read that there is. People have said that there is crashing when playing the backwards compatible Return to Arkham City through the PS5, the 1.0 version. I played it for a few hours, saw none. So I'm sure it happens, and those stability patches that came out and locked the frame rate later on in the updated version to 30 FPS and also improved the stability, they probably really did improve the stability, but it wasn't bad enough that I ever noticed a crash. To me, it's much more worth it to play in 60 FPS on Return to Arkham City on the PS5 version 1.0 with the possibility of a crash that I've never encountered yet than it is to actually play it in a locked 30 FPS on the PS4 Pro or on the PS5 updated. It's just more worth it to me because it looks a lot better. It looks a lot more like real life to me. But again, the PC version is going to have its own things. It's a more native scaling. It looks a lot more like it originally did because it is just the original release that has sort of become easier to run on, I guess, modern PC infrastructure over time. And also, it has some better designs for characters. So it really comes down to, at the end of the day, what you prefer. Do you want 100 FPS on PC? Do you want the original graphics on PC? Or do you prefer, or 4K, or do you prefer the remaster? Do you prefer what, I guess, the new designs are and the new shadows and the new lighting, and you want to just play it in a comfortable 60 FPS? I think either way, this game looks great. I think we can all agree that maybe the only places where it runs probably the worst, not saying it's unplayable or bad, is the PS3, Xbox 360, and the Wii U. With the Wii U actually having its own features with the Armored Edition, worth pointing out at some point. But it's a very, very confusing topic because of just all the differences between these versions. So I'm interested to know what you think down below. I was very, very surprised to find this new enhancement, I guess, for the PS5. This is something that some people found out back in February. I never saw it. I never saw in the news article or that you could do this. So I wanted to mess around with it and kind of give my take on the different versions of it and where I think this game is best to be played. I think I prefer the PC version in terms of some of the original designs and how it runs and the actual, what would you say, aspect ratio and pixel count and all that. But it's certainly not a bad time on the PS5 at 1.0. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm very, very interested to hear what you think. Where is your favorite place to play Arkham City? What are your thoughts on all of this? What do you think looks better as well? Do you like the original graphics better? Do you like the remaster? Do you like some of each? Interested to hear your thoughts down below. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content if you enjoyed this video. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shui. Thanks for sticking it out to the end of the video. You are one of the real ones, and videos like this are only made possible by our patron supporters. So a huge thank you to some of our patron supporters: Caleb, Andre, Jonah, Seth, Ricardo, and Michael. You guys help keep the lights on when it comes to the channel and allow us to make a lot of different stuff because we are a variety channel. We make so many different things. Some of those things do great. Some of them do absolutely horrible if it comes down to just viewership and the work put into each video. But because of our patron supporters, we are able to keep making them. Thank you so much to you guys. And if you are interested in checking out our Patreon, it is a way that you can actually help support the channel that helps us out just a ton. You will gain access to almost 100 exclusive videos over on the Patreon that are not available anywhere else or to anyone else. Behind the scenes fun that we hope you will enjoy. And hey, maybe you're someone who wants to help support us, but you're not super interested in the behind the scenes stuff or exclusive videos. Maybe you want something physical for your buck. My wife and I also run Enchanted Glamor. This is a really interesting and cool jewelry company that my wife runs, where she makes all kinds of bracelets, earrings, headbands, and lots of other accessories. They are, some of them are for women, some of them are for men. A lot of them are unisex. I wear them too. So I really hope you'll check that out because each purchase, can't speak, also goes to help keep the lights on with the channel and keep us running. Maybe you have a mom, a sister, a girlfriend, a potential girlfriend, a victim, who knows, that you would like to buy something for, and Enchanted Glamor is there for you. We are not responsible for any crimes you may commit after buying our products. Let us know what you think. Be sure to check that out and have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shui.